What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Wake and Jake College Football Show. We've got a Week 11 recap, which means we are so close to the end of the season. There are some teams that only have 2 games left to play. It's a sad time of year. It goes so quickly. Before you know it, you're at the end of the season. Now, some would argue we're just starting to get into the best time of the year. Conference championships, bowl season, playoffs. But I like the regular season. I think it's sad that we're getting to the end of football season. It always sneaks up on me, but it is what it is. Typical show today, Week 11 recap, Friday's games, Saturday's games. We'll get into my top 25, my updated dead list, recap the bets, winning attitude. We got through it with a winning record this weekend, and then finish off with, dude, are you high? But before we do any of that, let's get a little high. And this first smoke break, brought to you by coffee. Because what's a wake and bake sesh without a little coffee to wake you up? All right, let's get into the Friday night games. Cal at Wake Forest. Again, it's always going to be weird to me for probably ever. Cal, Wake Forest was an ACC matchup. Cal pulls off the victory 46-36. And if you like offense, specifically passing offense, this was your game. Both teams combined for 92 passing attempts and for over 650 yards passing. Defense, absolutely optional in this game. Now, Cal's defense did allow 36 points. That's kind of a lot. Like I said, defense optional. But in a weird way, they played kind of good. They had 7 sacks and 4 turnovers. So they were allowing a lot of explosive plays, is basically what that tells me, because 36 points is a lot. Combined with Cal and Wake Forest, 92 passing attempts, 650 yards, that's a lot. But 7 sacks is fantastic. 4 turnovers is also fantastic. So it's just a weird game for Cal. Both teams desperately needed this win to make a bowl game. Chances of Wake Forest making a bowl now dropped significantly. Cal's increased significantly. Cal's final 3 games: Syracuse, Stanford, SMU. And they only need to win one of those to make a bowl game. And let's be honest, they should definitely win at least one of those, possibly 2. They could definitely beat Syracuse. They should beat Stanford. SMU is going to be difficult, but Cal should be able to make a bowl game now. Wake Forest, on the other hand, I don't know about that. They finished with UNC, winnable to an extent. Miami, I guess winnable. We'll get into them later. And Duke, I guess technically is also winnable. But they need to win 2 of those 3 to make a bowl game. And I just have a hard time seeing that happen. I think Wake's not gonna make a bowl game, and they're gonna get a little restless, just a little bit. I know they're not a football powerhouse, but they do expect to at least make a bowl game. Iowa 17, UCLA 20. I mean, credit to UCLA. I have been down on them all year. They started the season looking like one of the worst teams in the country. Now, granted, it was kind of a difficult schedule. I'll give them that. But the last few weeks, they have started to look like a better team. I said it earlier in the year that I really wish that UCLA and Purdue were playing each other this year just so we could see that terrible matchup. But now I'm convinced that UCLA would win that easily because Purdue is just god-awful and UCLA has gotten better as the year's gone on. With only 3 games left, they could make a bowl game. They absolutely could make a bowl game. It is in the cards for them now. They absolutely shut down this Iowa offense, which, granted, let's be honest, it's not hard to shut down that passing game because it's just non-existent. And Iowa just wants to run the ball down your throat anyways. But they did hold Caleb Johnson to 49 yards and 2.7 yards per carry. Absolutely shut him down, and that's the only way that Iowa can beat you is if Caleb Johnson gets rolling. If he doesn't get rolling, they are not going to win the game. And credit to UCLA, they were able to shut him down. Now, granted, their offense, UCLA's, didn't look great. Just wasn't what we had seen the last couple weeks. But that's going to happen. You're playing Iowa. Iowa's got a great defense. And let's be honest, Iowa's offense looked worse, and that's absolutely worse. And that's why UCLA won this game. Iowa is just too one-dimensional. They've always been pretty one-dimensional. Well, even more one-dimensional because they've always been a defense-only team. This year they were defense and running attack team, but when you shut down that running attack, they're fucked. Yeah, I'm shocked, honestly. I'm still kind of in shock that UCLA won that game because, like I said, I've been down on them all year. I really thought there was no chance in hell they could beat Iowa, but what the fuck do I know? All right, let's get into Saturday's games. We'll get into the noon slate. We are going to skip that game for now. We'll get back to it later because I'm still salty. Let's do Ohio State 45, Purdue nothing. I thought Purdue would score something. I didn't think, maybe first drive of the game they might get into field goal range, kick a field goal. I thought maybe that would happen. And then, later in the game, when Ohio State sits their starters like they did, you thought maybe Purdue could get another late field goal, possibly a touchdown in garbage time. But no, they got jack shit. They couldn't do anything offensively, even against the backups. I really don't have anything to say on this game other than Ohio State had this game won immediately. It was 21-0 at half, and honestly, they could have just put in the backups that second half and won the game. Purdue put up just absolutely no fight. They barely got over 200 yards of total offense. Will Howard threw for more yards than Purdue had total in this game. It was that much of a blowout. And 45-0 tells you exactly what you need to know about this game. Just all around terrible. Texas 49, Florida 17. This could not have happened at a funnier time. Florida just getting absolutely blown out like this. Earlier this week, Florida announced that they had no plans to move on from Billy Napier. Now, Florida fans took to Twitter and lost their shit. I'm never going to another game as long as he's the coach this year or next year, yada, yada, yada. If you go back and read that statement, and maybe I just misread it, but it felt pretty vague. Just left out the part where they said we re-signed him, we renewed his contract, he's going to be the coach next year. They just said he's the coach for right now. We're not replacing him right now. That doesn't mean at the end of the year they're not still going to fire him, or beginning of next year, before next year starts, going to fire him. It could happen. Now, who knows if it will? Maybe he does start next season because maybe they're trying, and it's possible they're trying to save recruits by putting that out. Maybe they don't want players like DJ Lagway to transfer out, or some of these recruits coming up for this upcoming signing class, because early signing day is roughly a month away. I mean, we're not far from early signing day, and Florida might be wanting to keep some of those guys on camp, some of those recruits from flipping. I just think it's funny that they announce they have no plans to move on from him, and then they just put up no fight against Texas. Just absolutely jack shit. Now, granted, offensively, they're without Graham Mertz, they're without Lagway. I don't even know who else they were without. But when you're down to your third-string quarterback, who is a freshman also, I mean, Lagway's a freshman too, but he was a 5-star. This guy was not a 5-star. Warner, not a 5-star. You couldn't expect much to happen from that offense, but their defense just didn't even show up. Ewers was 17 of 25, 297 yards, 4 touchdowns at halftime. That's not even a full game for him. That was halftime. This game was over so quick. Texas didn't even try in the second half. They didn't have to. 49-17, the final score. Florida fans are pissed. And honestly, I don't blame them. All right, held out long enough. We'll get into it. Minnesota Minute. Minnesota 19, Rutgers 26. I almost didn't rep any Minnesota gear today because I felt they didn't deserve it. But I already did that earlier this year. One time was enough. I didn't need to do it a second time. But man, am I disappointed. Kyle Monangai didn't even play for Rutgers. Rutgers has been banged up for weeks. Yes, they just came off a bye week, but some of these guys Doesn't necessarily mean they're fully healthy. Uh, and you have Ethan Kalik-Manis that you're going up against. Gopher fans know everything you need to know about Ethan, that all you have to do is force him to throw the ball on you and you will win the game. And with Rutgers' top rusher out, it was going to make this so much easier to just make Ethan beat you with his arm and walk out with an easy win. But guess what? Ethan actually did beat you with his arm. That first half, he was lighting the Gophers up. He did throw an interception on a deep drive in the end zone, which helped and was a huge reason the Gophers were only down 14-9 at half. But he was 14-20 for 216 yards in that first half and 2 touchdowns. Just lit the Gophers up. It was absolutely insane. Now, they did shut him down in the second half. They started to get pressure on him. He struggled to complete anything in that second half. He did end up throwing another touchdown late, but absolutely shut him down in that second half. The only problem is Gophers' offense got absolutely shut down too. It was difficult to watch. Brosmer had 5.8 yards per attempt. I saw some, I'm going to be nice about this, so-called Gopher expert on Twitter at halftime say, we need to start running the ball more because we've had success at it. I'm sorry, by the way, he almost won Dude Are You High for that comment, because if you had looked at to that point and for the rest of the game, the Gophers' rushing attack had been abysmal. Darius Taylor had one run of 18 yards, which can happen for a multitude of reasons. You know, like one 18-yard burst, take that away. He finished the game with 9 carries for 10 yards. The Gophers had no rushing attack the whole game. That first half, like I said, take away that 18-yard run, and there was nothing in the run game. You had Brosmer, pull some Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson type shit and run out of the pocket to avoid some sacks and get some positive yardage, but he was under pressure all day. Had zero time. He, at one point, shotgun, gets the snap, fakes the handoff, and before he even, play action, before he even gets that ball up to even cock it to throw, he's already getting sacked. That's how quick they were getting into the backfield at times. It was just insane. Rutgers ended this game with only 4 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. It should have been more. Honestly, Brosmer, like I said, he pulled some crazy shit to get out of some of those sacks that I did not see him doing. Also, Darius Taylor, I already said, 9 carries for 10 yards. If you take away that one 18-yard run, no catches in this game. Absolutely no catches. Rutgers shut him down. Now, I don't think Darius Taylor was fully healthy. He got banged up last week. We saw it. He was struggling a little bit. So coming into this game, he was not fully healthy. But they shut him down. The defense, they got picked apart in that first half, and it was not great. But they dominated that second half. They really did. One of them, you can't blame them. You fumbled deep in your own zone. Rutgers recovers it. Regardless, they're going to have a field goal attempt unless you get a turnover. They couldn't really help that. So really, I don't fault them for one of those touchdown drives. That defense played well, and that offense just absolutely shit the bed and let them down. And I don't know why I let myself get invested, involved, believing. That's really what it comes down to. I don't know why I let myself believe that Minnesota is going to pull through, because whenever they get into this position, they always lose every single time. They're on the verge of being ranked in the top 25. All they have to do is win this week, and they're probably in the top 25. And they shit the bed. Just frustrating. Absolutely frustrating. West Virginia at Cincinnati. West Virginia 31, Cincinnati 24. And talking about shit in the bed, Cincinnati shit the bed. This is a game they should have won. They outgained West Virginia 436 to 248. Time of possession battle, 35 minutes. It was like 34 minutes, 56 seconds, so 35 minutes to 25 minutes. That's 10 more minutes with the ball. Third down conversions, you were complete 44%, 7 of 16. And West Virginia, 3 of 11. Those 3 stats alone, if you showed anybody these 3 stats and be like, which team do you think won? The team that had the ball more often, converted way more third downs, and had it for more yards, or threw it, ran it, all that for more yards. Which team won? You would think that team, right? No, they lost the game because of turnovers. They just 17 points off of turnovers they allowed. 2 were returned for touchdowns, so an interception return, fumble return. They had another fumble that gave West Virginia a pretty short field so they could kick a field goal. That's 17 points off of turnovers. Honestly, West Virginia is lucky-ish to have won this game because 2 turnovers being returned for a touchdown and a third giving you a very short field. That's some skill, a little bit of luck as well. Cincinnati definitely lost this game more than West Virginia won it because, like I said, you look at most of the stats, take out the turnovers, and if you looked at those stats, you would have thought West Virginia got absolutely boat raced. But then you throw in those turnovers and you kind of look at when those turnovers came and what happened off of those turnovers. Oh, Cincinnati fans got to be furious watching that game. All right. I wanted to save this one for last when it came to the noon games. Miami at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech 28, Miami 23, and I fucking told you. I told you, if Haynes King plays, then Georgia Tech will cover and possibly win this game. And look what happened. He played. Now, he didn't play the full game. They went with a whole 2-quarterback system, which I am on record for absolutely hating. I hate it so much. But it kind of worked this week. I also said last week, Miami has been flirting with disaster all year. And Cristobal always loses games he's not supposed to lose. Going all the way back to Oregon, it's just there's always games that they lose. And look what happened. This was fantastic. I loved it. I've been waiting for Miami to lose. Every week I keep saying, this could probably be the game, but it just still hasn't happened. This was a game, though, I knew if Haynes King played, they had a chance to lose. And sure enough, they did. They were down 14-10 at half and just never regained the lead. Credit to Georgia Tech's offense. Like I said, they went with a 2 QB system. And normally, again, like I said, I'm not a fan of it, but Miami had no answer for it. And Georgia Tech didn't even have 100 yards passing. Didn't have to. They just ran the ball up and down that field. And Miami could not get off the field on third downs. Georgia Tech was 9 of 14 on third downs, which allowed them to completely control the time of possession. And, like I said, ran up and down that defense. Now, also credit to their defense as well. They did stand strong when it came to third and fourth downs. Miami was a combined 4 of 14 on third and fourth downs. And then they were able to force turnover late to seal the game. It was just overall a great game. We knew it was coming because we saw that defense. It was just a matter of stopping that offense, and Georgia Tech finally stopped that offense. And it was a real fun game to watch. I don't know what it is, but Mario Cristobal cannot beat Georgia Tech. Because if you remember, that's the game last year. I think I said it before. Miami just had to kneel the ball to win the game. They decided not to. Fumbled. Georgia Tech won the game. All right, let's get into the afternoon games. Georgia at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 28, Georgia 10. Man, Ole Miss came to play. That defense, or at least that defense did. 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 3 forced turnovers. Just dominated. Came out firing, did not stop. Georgia really hasn't had a rushing attack this season, which is kind of odd just because if you look at the past, they've always had a great rushing attack. And that continued in this game. Now, part of that was the offensive line, as we'll get into, because Carson Beck didn't play terrible. He did have an interception, but the last few weeks he's been absolutely butt cheeks. He wasn't butt cheeks today or yesterday. Didn't play terrible, but didn't play good. Now, in his defense and the running backs and everybody, that offensive line struggled. The offense as a whole struggled, but more specifically, that offensive line struggled. That defensive line for Ole Miss is tough. We knew they were tough. They've been tough all year. Georgia had no answer for them. Ole Miss offense, they were not amazing, but they were good enough. They didn't score 56 points like they did against Arkansas, but that's really we didn't expect that. 28 points is a good amount to score against this Georgia defense. Huge win for Ole Miss, huge win for Lane Kiffin. I'm pretty sure this is their biggest win for both of them, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin of all time. Uh, we'll get into Tennessee a little later, but Georgia could be in trouble here. They've had an absolute gauntlet of a schedule, a very hard schedule. Most teams getting through to this point with only 2 losses, that's great. Honestly, it is, because like I said, it's been a difficult schedule. So props to Georgia for only having 2 losses, but they could lose to Tennessee next week. And Georgia might not. I mean, if they do make the playoffs, they might not make a run. Now, who knows? Georgia's always, Kirby Smart's always got them fired up for big games. This was supposed to be a big game. You'd think he would have had them fired up. Who knows? I don't know. They're injured. It's hard to always count them out because it is Georgia. It's kind of like those Alabama teams. You can just never quite count them out. But if they lose next week to Tennessee, I'm counting them out officially. You can't get 3 losses and make the playoffs. Michigan at Indiana. Indiana 20, Michigan 15. Yes, Michigan does not have a great record. They were 5-4 going into this game, but this was definitely Indiana's biggest challenge so far this season. I would say Michigan, again, record-wise may not have been the best challenge going in, but team-wise, I think they were the hardest challenge. But early in this game, it looked like Indiana was going to run away with it. They were up 17-3 at half, which, like I said, you thought they were running away with it. But Michigan kind of made it a game in the second half, and it might have made, if you were just kind of casually watching this game off to the side, it probably made you a little nervous, especially if you were, rooting for Indiana fan, that sort of thing. But it feels like when you watch this game, Indiana never really felt in jeopardy of losing. Two of Michigan's scoring drives came on short fields, and those short fields, one was from a turnover, one was from a terrible punt. Take away those 2 plays, and this might have been a bigger blowout than what it shows. Just because, like I said, short fields, it was almost a guaranteed score for Michigan. Overall, their defense did a good job of shutting Michigan down. Indiana's offense did struggle. Michigan was starting to get after Curtis Rourke, and it's not something that we've seen all season. Teams haven't always been able to get pressure on him, so good win for Indiana. It really was. People might, like I said, look at Michigan's record and be like, oh, they struggled against Michigan? Yeah, they struggled against Michigan. I think this was their toughest test. I really do. And they faced adversity for the first time essentially this season, and they came out with a win. You can't ask for much more. This wagon continues to roll. They go into the bye week undefeated, 10-0, 2 games left to go. They may finish 11-1. Iowa State at Kansas. Kansas 45, Iowa State 36. I fucking called it. Jalen Daniels, I told you, he's been playing like a brand new quarterback over the last 3 games, and Kansas plays every game tough, every game close. They've only been blown out once, and that was by 11 points. And 2-6 going into this game. Like I said, all those games most of them were by 1 score or less. Now, yes, Jalen Daniels has been playing like a brand new quarterback the last 3 games. He was all right. He was pretty good yesterday, but not as good as he has been. Iowa State's defense is supposed to be tough. Supposed to be. He was 12 of 24, which is not great, but he did throw for 295 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had 68 rushing yards and a touchdown. So, like I said, the completion numbers maybe weren't great, but threw for almost 300 yards, ran for 50 plus more, 60 plus more, whatever. 3 total touchdowns. He had a good game. He's playing like a brand new quarterback. And like I said, this Iowa State defense is supposed to be good, but they could not stop shit. Got absolutely destroyed through the air. 24, nearly 25 yards per reception. That 25 yards per completion is insane. And Iowa State isn't bad offensively. It just took them so long to get going. Kansas was up 31-10 at one point, and a 21-point deficit when you cannot stop their offense is a hard deficit to overcome. They made a game of it. They did start to storm back. but Kansas was able to prevail 45-36, and Kansas is the best 3-win bad team in the country. They really are. Watch out. If you have to play Kansas throughout the end of the year, if you're one of those 3 remaining Big 12 teams that has to play them, don't overlook them. They could beat you. Clemson, 24, Virginia Tech, 14. Not going to lie, Clemson fans were probably very nervous in this one just because at halftime, Virginia Tech was up 7-0, and the only score in that game was a 77-yard blocked field goal return. What the fuck? I probably would have been a little nervous as a Clemson fan. You know, you lost to Louisville last week, and you're down 7-0, and that was the score. But Clemson's offense, they woke up. They finally woke up after halftime. Their first 4 drives in that second half, 3 of them were scores. And Virginia Tech just could never get anything going offensively. Like I said, their 1 touchdown in that first half was a blocked field goal return. Virginia Tech finished with 14 points. So, I mean, couldn't get anything going on offense. They finally found success, like, very late in the game. I think there's like 2 minutes left or just under 2 minutes left when they scored their touchdown, their only touchdown on offense. Garbage time. Clemson was up 24-7, and we see that a lot with Clemson. They do seem to allow a lot of garbage time points. They'll be up big and then allow like huge, and then allow 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter or some shit like that. But other than that shaky first half with their offense, this was a dominant performance for Clemson, very much needed after losing to Louisville. And, I mean, Virginia Tech is a team that absolutely loves to run the ball, and they could not find success at all and ended up turning the ball over 13 times and really never stood a chance, even with a halftime lead. South Carolina, 28, Vandy, 7. The magic is finally worn off. It's unfortunate, it's sad. It's to be expected. Vandy is battered, they're bruised, and they're ready for this bye week. This was their 6th game in a row, and they just need a break. It's been and they've played some tough teams during that time too. Texas, Alabama, it's been a grind. And Auburn, it's been a grind. And they're ready for this bye week, and it's much deserved. South Carolina, they did everything you need to do to beat Vandy. And I've been saying it every week. Win the third down battle, or stop them on third down, win the time of possession battle, win the turnover battle. Do those 3 things, you'll win this game. South Carolina did exactly that. Stopped them on third down, won the time of possession battle, and didn't lose the turnover battle. South Carolina actually weirdly could not be stopped on offense, which is strange because they've been very inconsistent. They'll come off one game great, play the next game terrible. Granted, they've had some injuries, but it was kind of strange to see now. Vandy is banged up, so that could have something to do with it. But they just could not get anything going offensively. And I really do think that if you played this game again, but didn't have Vandy playing their 6th game in a row, where, like I said earlier, some of those games were, Alabama and Texas and Auburn, just tough teams, SEC schedule, 6th game in a row. It's hard. That's a tough ask. I think if you play this game again, it's a much closer game. Congrats to South Carolina. They're bowl eligible, and when you look at the rest of the season, 9-3, 8-4 is definitely on the table. And I said it before, Spencer Rattler, if he happened to be here one more year with you guys would be a much better team. I still believe that. I think you guys could be finishing with a 2-loss season and be making the playoffs if Spencer Rattler was your quarterback. All right, going into the evening slate. No really good games, let's be honest. There were some close ones like Oklahoma-Mizzou, but until the last 5 minutes of the game, that was an ugly, ugly game. Just not a great evening slate. Maryland at Oregon. Maryland 18, Oregon 39. I have nothing to say about this game. Maryland couldn't stop Oregon. They turned the ball over 3 times. Just a disaster. Dylan Gabriel didn't have the best game numbers-wise, but he didn't need to be outstanding because Maryland could not stop any part of this game. Now, Maryland's supposed to have a good run defense and a terrible pass defense, but that was kind of opposite in this game. Not that Dylan Gabriel, like I said, played bad. He just didn't have great numbers. But Oregon, Maryland had no answers for that rushing attack. And Oregon has 2 games left. They finished the season against Wisconsin and Washington. I had Oregon going 11-1 this season. They might go undefeated. I don't see them losing to Washington. Wisconsin, I don't really see them losing to Wisconsin either. They'll probably finish undefeated. Just an absolute dominant performance from start to finish. I'm starting to think that Oregon and Ohio State might be the 2 best teams in the country. I know that's not crazy to say, but just every single week it seems to be that way. Mississippi State at Tennessee. Tennessee 33, Mississippi State 14. This was supposed to be a, for lack of a better term, get right game for Nico in the offense, but instead Nico gets hurt right before halftime and is ruled out the rest of the game. And I know that makes a lot of Tennessee fans nervous because while Gaston Moore came in and didn't look terrible, you probably don't love your chances of him as your quarterback if Nico ends up being out for an extended period of time. Now, all reports say that he's not going to be out for a long time. I heard people saying it was a broken collarbone. Some said concussion. Josh Heupel claims it was precautionary and that he fully expects him to be ready for Georgia. We'll see. We'll see if there's truth behind that. But if that is the truth and he is going to be ready for Georgia, that's a huge sigh of relief for Vol Nation. They were going to be they're going to feel a lot better about the rest of the season if it was really just precautionary. Now, if he is out for an extended period of time, it could be troublesome. Could they beat Georgia without Nico? Sure. Is it going to be a lot more difficult? Definitely. Could they win their last 2 games with Gaston Moore? Oh, 100%. But once you start to get to the playoffs, if Nico's not back by then, that's when you start to get nervous. So if he is going to be back for Georgia, that's great news for Tennessee. Tennessee's defense is still very good. Van Buren could not throw the ball for the life of him. But they did find success in the running game, which is probably one thing that will make you nervous about Tennessee's defense is the run defense. The last 2 weeks, Kentucky, Mississippi State, they have both found success on the ground against this Tennessee defense. Georgia doesn't really worry me, I guess, if you're Tennessee, that they're going to run it all over you just because they haven't really shown that they can except against Texas. But that could be something to look at moving forward. But overall, dominant win, even without Nico. The rush attack could not be stopped. Dylan Sampson was running all over this team. And before Nico got hurt, he was having a great game. 8 of 13, which I guess is not great, but it's not bad. 174 and 2 touchdowns. Had he gotten to play a whole game and wasn't injured, he probably would have thrown for 300 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. Let's be honest. If Nico is healthy, Tennessee has every shot in the world to win out the rest of the year. If he's not, Georgia's going to be tough, but the other 2 are still very winnable, and 11-1 is very much still on the table. Even with Nico getting hurt, it's still very much on the table, and 10-2 is definitely the floor for this team. I think Tennessee's a playoff team. The biggest question is Nico. Florida State 3, Notre Dame 52. Florida State sucks. I just wanted to tell you the score to tell you how bad they lost. UCF 31, Arizona State 35. Cam Skattebo is out. Doesn't matter. Arizona State is a good team. Kenny Dillingham is a great coach. I like this. As long as Kenny Dillingham is the coach of Arizona State, I am buying stock in Arizona State. They are 7-2 right now after that win. They have tough games against Kansas State and BYU. So there's a chance that they go 1-2 in their final 3. But finishing 8-4 is still a great season for Arizona State. Let's be honest, nobody saw this coming. I could actually pull it up right now to see what their preseason win total was because I definitely didn't have them going. I had them going 4-8 this year. Let's just put it that way. And Vegas had them at 4.5. So exceeded that a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but you know what I mean. 8-4 season, still a great season. Even if you do lose to Kansas State and BYU, you're going to beat Arizona. They're dead. But Arizona State, good team. Bama at LSU. Bama 42, LSU 13. Wow. LSU, what a terrible performance to put on at home. Jalen Milroe didn't even have to throw the ball. 12 of 18, 109 yards. That's it. But he ran the ball 12 times for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. We've seen this LSU defense struggle to stop mobile quarterbacks, so we knew this was probably going to be a thing, but 12 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns is absolutely insane. This LSU defensive line, which has been good at getting pressure on the quarterback, tackles for loss, all of that, finished the game with 0 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. And Garrett Nussmeier was not good. And I know this is going to come as a shock to absolutely nobody, but the run game was also non-existent, yet again. 1 45-yard run, which is great, don't get me wrong, but you take away that one run of 45 yards, the whole team averaged 2.5 yards per carry. One explosive play and that's it. Just couldn't get anything going in the run game. Again, not that shocking. But Garrett Nussmeier, not good. LSU is officially out of the playoffs. Fans are pissed. And Brian Kelly's seat is starting to get a little warm, if I'm going to be honest. Starting to get a little warm. The second most annoying game from Saturday, obviously the first being Minnesota, was the Oklahoma-Mizzou game. I was so confident that Mizzou was not going to be Ole Miss from last year. The team that I kept saying was going to lose, and they just kept winning and winning and winning. Mizzou is this year's Ole Miss for me. They win this game 30-23, and I am so mad. And I went on about how they should not be ranked in the top 24 or top 25, and they were ranked 24th. And they fucking won, which means they're probably going to be ranked higher, and they don't deserve it. Oh, it just makes me so upset. And this was an ugly game. They did not deserve to win this game, but Oklahoma didn't either, let's be honest. Neither team had even 300 yards of offense, which is terrible. Absolutely terrible, by the way. But the one difference is Oklahoma turned it over 4 times. And Mizzou just can't keep getting away with this. They can't. They had a terrible game. It's just Oklahoma had an even worse game. Venables should be fired after this game, just solely because you lost to Missouri. It's not that even that you lost to Missouri. You lost to a Missouri team that had Drew Pine as their quarterback. Mizzou's going to fucking finish the damn season 10-2 or 9-3. And like I said, they're the Ole Miss of last year, and I hate it. I hate it. I just absolutely hate Mizzou. Washington, Penn State. So many people thought after that performance that Penn State put up last week that they were going to be bad in this game and that Washington would cover and that the point spread was too high, all this stuff. And I just could not figure out why they thought that, why people didn't have any faith in this Penn State team to come out with a little fire against a bad Washington team. Because that's exactly what they did. They won the game 35-6. Yet they needed this win big. They knew it. They came out with a fire, and they absolutely dominated on both sides of the ball. Washington could not do anything all night. 200 yards of total offense, less than actually. They didn't even get to 200 yards of offense. Just both quarterbacks that played for Washington could not get away from this pressure. And Aller picked Washington's defense apart. Singleton and Allen couldn't be stopped in the rush attack. Washington just never stood a chance. They really didn't. Penn State was so upset about that loss to Ohio State. You had to have known they were going to come out with some sort of vengeance. Just no chance for Washington. This win should quiet the fans a little bit. I know they're still going to be upset. They're still going to be clamoring and all that stuff, but this should quiet them down just a little bit. Late night game, the Holy War, BYU 22, Utah 21. It did not disappoint. BYU was down 21-10 at half and was able to fight back against this great Utah defense and won the game on a last-second field goal. People might look at this team, BYU, undefeated, playing a close game against Utah, who is not having a great season. They might not look at this as a great win, but I do. I think it is a great win. Playing a night game at Utah is always going to be difficult. Add in the fact that this is now also a rivalry game. It makes it even harder to call this a bad win because rivalry games are always tough. Night games at Utah are even tougher. No matter who you are, no matter what team you are, it's a tough game. The fact that they were able to fight back in that second half and win was a good sign in my opinion. They faced adversity and they overcame it. Offensively, they struggled. They really did, and that should come as no surprise because Utah's defense is always good. But they persevered and they won. By 1 of 12 on third down. Absolutely abysmal. I do not know how they won a game going 1 for 12 on third down. If it was like 1 for 5 or something like that, you'd be like, okay, well, they just never faced third downs. 12 third downs, that's a lot of third downs to not convert. But Utah's offense, shocker, struggled. 3 turnovers, and without those turnovers, BYU might have actually lost this game. But congrats to Utah. You guys scored more than 20. You hit the 20-point mark. You got 21. You haven't hit 20 points since September 21st. That's a month and a half ago. Congrats. You hit 20 points. Proud of you. Now, as much as I said this is a good win for BYU, the fact that they were able to overcome this and face adversity and win and all that stuff, I do think the magic runs out in the next couple weeks. They play both Kansas and Arizona State, and I do think that one or both of those teams can beat BYU. Dead list. Just a reminder. Kansas, Virginia Tech, Auburn, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, NC State, Florida State, UNC, Baylor, Arizona, Michigan, Kentucky, Utah, Rutgers, Cal, all on the dead list. You could argue, I guess, Cal's working their way off of it, but they had just so many close losses that they just forked up that they're dead. But getting added this week, LSU and Pitt. Pitt, your ACC chances completely out the window now. You lost this weekend. You lost last weekend. You're done for. You had a good season. You know, it's a great season. Nothing to be ashamed of. You're dead. LSU, dead. You're not making the playoffs. That was a goal this season, and that goal is not going to happen. You're out. Iowa State, you have been added to dead watch. Some would argue that they should just be automatically on the dead list, but that Big 12 is just still so wide open that they're not dead yet, but they're very much on dead watch. Recap in the betting weekend. Positive attitude, winning mindset, turning this thing around, however slowly I might be doing it. 3-2 this weekend, 27-34 overall, still down 9.9 units. Now, if you've been fading me all year, you're probably doing just fine, but it's been a rough year for you, boy. Granted, the 5 ones that I'm giving out every week have been struggling. My betting overall has been fantastic, and that makes this even more frustrating. The parlay, the Power 4 parlay is 2-9, down 4 units. Just depressing. My buddy, he had Pitt, Minnesota, Ole Miss, BYU for his money lines. 2-2 this weekend. I beat him. I think this was the first weekend that I've actually beat him when it came to that. Even weekends that I had a winning record, he still had a winning record and more units won. He is 25-11 overall and up just under 15 units. And his parlay also did not hit this weekend. I don't remember off the top of my head who it was. I think it had Iowa State on it, Vandy or something like that. I don't fully remember. Anyways, it doesn't matter because it didn't hit. He's 3-6 on his parlays this year, up just under 5 units. And finally, we get to Dude, Are You High? But before we get into Dude, Are You High? Let's take a quick smoke break. You High is brought to you by weed. Because, dude, how can you be high without a little weed? A couple of candidates this week. Honestly, it was a hard decision. I couldn't decide between the three. I settled on one. We're going to go with it. But ones that were in contention, one of them was me. The fact that I had faith, that I believed, that I thought there was a chance that the Gophers were going to win this weekend and get ranked, be in the top 25, get some respect, finish the season 9-3. What a joke. What a joke. Dude, are you high? Why would you think that that was even a possibility? It's the Gophers. That's never going to happen. It's a Minnesota team. You're a Minnesota sports fan. It's always disappointment. I let myself get invested. Mistake. I let myself believe. Mistake. Anyways, Sharon Moore. End of the game. You're down. 5 points. 1-score game. You have timeouts. And Indiana runs the ball on first down. I think it's like an 8-yard gain, so they don't even get the first down. And then he just sits there and allows the clock to just continue to run down. And like I said, he had timeouts. It wasn't like they didn't have any timeouts left. He had 2 or 3. I don't even know if he had. I know he had at least 2. He might have had 3. And just doesn't call a timeout for like 25 seconds. Just let that clock run all the way down. Dude, are you high? You're down 1 score. You stopped them on the first play. Call a timeout to give your team a chance. It just made no sense. I don't think he lasts long at Michigan, if I'm going to be honest. I'm not saying he's out after this year, but I think he's out next year at some point. But, dude, are you high? What are you doing? Anyways, the winner of Dude, are you high? Eli Drinkwitz, head coach for Missouri, with the most it hurt. It hurt my brain to hear him say it. Because in what world is Missouri, who, yes, is only a 2-loss team, 7-2, in what world are they still in playoff contention? Because he said that yesterday. He said, Missouri is still very much in playoff contention. I don't understand how you think that. I get it. You're the coach. You have to back your team and be positive and all that stuff. But, dude, are you high? You guys are not even close to playoff contention. You will not make the playoffs. There's no chance in hell that you make the playoffs. You have got to be high if you are thinking that. Just outlandish. Absolutely outlandish. Anyways, thank you all for joining me. It was a great weekend of college football for the most part. I enjoyed most of it very much, and I am very excited for this next weekend. So I will talk to you guys on Thursday to preview Week 12.